Imagine an election where the most popular choice isn't even a person, but a protest. Well, that's pretty much what's happening right now in Bolivia. The country's democracy is at a serious crossroads, facing a crisis of belief in the system itself. But this isn't just a story about things falling apart. It's also a search for a cure. Let's get into it.
And just look at this. This one chart really shows you the scale of the problem. Recent polls show that the biggest group of voters, a huge 32%, aren't backing any candidate. They're planning to cast blank or spoil ballots, or they're just completely undecided. To put that into perspective for you, that's nearly double the support for the leading candidate. This isn't just a case of voter apathy. It's something much bigger.
So what is really going on here? Are we talking about millions of people who just can't be bothered to make a choice? Or is it something else, something more powerful? A deliberate, silent protest against this system that a lot of people feel has just plain left them behind.
Yeah, this is way more than a statistical fluke. It's a political statement. It points to this really deep, growing frustration with a political class that seems totally out of touch with what people are actually going through. You know, when you feel like your voice isn't being heard, sometimes silence, or in this case, a blank ballot, becomes the loudest way to shout. And get this, a full 60% of voters say they could still change their mind before the election. Now you might think, oh, well, they're just open-minded. But that's not really what this signals. It's a sign of a broken system. It shows a profound lack of trust, a system that simply isn't putting forward choices that people feel are worth getting excited about, let alone fighting for. This feeling of powerlessness is captured perfectly in this one quote from an analysis of the situation. It says, "The citizen has been relegated to a role of passive spectator who votes but does not decide." That really hits home, doesn't it? It's like democracy has become a sport you just watch from the sidelines.
So, where does this massive disconnect come from? Well, the problem isn't just about the individual politicians. It's about the system itself. It seems the very institutions that were designed to be independent watchdogs, to provide checks and balances, they've been captured.
I mean, on paper, Bolivia's democracy looks pretty solid. You've got the classic three branches of government, executive, legislative, and judicial, and they even added a fourth, an electoral branch. Plus, you have these really crucial oversight bodies, like the comptroller to watch the money and the ombudsman to protect citizens' rights. In theory, it's a great setup, but theory and practice are two very different things.
And here's where it all breaks down. The institutions that are meant to be the neutral referees, the courts, the electoral bodies, are now widely seen as totally politicized and they lack credibility. And what about the watchdogs? Well, the comptroller and the ombudsman are often seen not as defenders of the public, but more like arms of the very government they're supposed to be holding accountable.
So what you end up with is a system that looks great on a flowchart, but is pretty much hollow on the inside. It's been described as an institutional architecture that simulates control, but in practice is neutralized. The democratic engine is there, but it feels like the gears have been completely stripped.
Okay, but this story doesn't have to end with a broken system. For a potential way forward, we can just look at a neighbor, Uruguay. So what could Bolivia learn from Uruguay's incredibly successful model of what's called participatory democracy?
So what's the big difference? Well, think of it like this. In a traditional democracy, we citizens vote, and then we kind of watch from the sidelines for the next few years. But in a participatory democracy, citizens vote and they help decide all along the way. It's a huge shift. Power isn't just delegated to someone else. It's actively shared and overseen by the people.
And hey, this isn't just some nice-sounding idea. Uruguay has real tools that make it work. Citizens can actually force a national vote on a law they don't like using referendums. They can propose their own laws through popular initiatives, and they have a seat at the table through citizen councils, giving them a direct say in how things are run.
Now, this is a really critical point. This isn't about throwing out the existing system entirely. The goal is to create a hybrid model. These tools for direct democracy, they don't get rid of elected representatives. They actually complement and strengthen them by closing that huge gap between the government and the people.
All right, so how could something like this actually work in Bolivia? Well, the proposal zeroes in on one core idea. using citizen power to break the cycle of political influence and bring back independence and actual competence to the country's key institutions.
The central piece of this whole puzzle is the creation of what are called citizen councils. So imagine these independent groups made up of academics, professionals, and respected citizens, and here's the game changer. Their job is to select and evaluate top officials, like judges and the comptroller, and to do it with real, binding authority. This would take the power of appointments right out of the hands of politicians.
This lays out a pretty clear path to a system based on merit. Step 1, get rid of political quotas for jobs. No more appointments based on party loyalty. Step 2, hand over the selection process to these new independent citizen councils. Step 3, make sure all their work is done out in the open with transparent public hearings. And finally, Step 4, enforce term limits and mandates to stop this endless cycle of temporary, politically controlled appointments that just weakens the whole system.
So when you put it all together, what you're looking at is a clear three-part strategy to try and revitalize Bolivia's democracy, literally from the ground up.
Part 1 is all about direct citizen participation. This means putting in place those kinds of tools we saw in Uruguay, referendums, popular initiatives, things like that. The goal is simple. Give citizens a permanent, powerful voice in the decisions that shape their lives, turning them from passive spectators back into active participants.
Part 2 is about building a true merit-based system. This is where those citizen councils do their most important work, breaking the chokehold of politics on public appointments. It's all about rebuilding trust by making sure the people in charge, the judges, the comptrollers, the watchdogs, are independent, qualified, and chosen for what they know, not who they know.
And Part 3 is leveraging strategic international support. Let's be real, a transformation this big is tough to do alone. Strategic help from partners like the World Bank, Switzerland, or the Nordic countries can provide that crucial technical know-how and financial backing to help get these new citizen-led institutions off the ground and make sure they're built to last. But look, you can have all the new rules and councils in the world, and it's still only half the battle. The most important change here is a cultural one. This whole strategy demands a massive shift in mindset, from being a passive observer to an active participant in your own democracy. And that's a change that has to be nurtured, probably through civic education, to empower a new generation to really own it.
So, in the end, this crisis in Bolivia, it doesn't have to be the end of its democracy. You could actually see it as a huge opportunity for a rebirth. The same frustration that's leading to all those blank ballots could be the very energy needed to build something stronger, something more inclusive. The big question is, will Bolivia seize this moment and regenerate its democracy from the ground up?